Welcome back to another edition of Elevate Your Grind, brought to you by the Cannabis Lab. I am your host, Todd Rosales, and thank you very much for everybody joining us today. I know we got into some controversial topics yesterday, so hopefully you're still here. I haven't been canceled yet. The network has not sent down that notice. So we're here, and we're here, still here to support the industry. Keeping in the vein of having some of the top women in the industry on our show, today's guest is no different. Actually, she's on an official list, the same list that yesterday's guest was on. So I'm very excited to talk to her. So giving a little background here, and I know I said I would stop jabbering before the guest is introduced, but hey, I lied, right? So on that note, first of all, folks, March 11th, next C-Lab virtual event. Check that out, join clab.com. Now, my guest today. So I don't know, I'd say maybe 2 months ago or so, I was very interested in what I would call the next phase of the cannabis industry. So it just happened on LinkedIn. I happened to find a woman who is the founder of a group called the Highspitality group. If you guys remember her, that is Sarah Stewart. It was a great interview that I really enjoyed. And a lot of times when I go on podcasts and people ask me about my favorite guests, I talked about Dr. Chandra, I've talked about Erica Daniels, and Sarah is another one that I bring up because to me, that's the next part of the cannabis industry, which is social cannabis, right? We've got medical, we've got adult use, and then social cannabis. At some point, we're going to have a social aspect of it, whether it's in parks, it's outside, it's lounges, it's bars, it's restaurants, whatever it's going to be. But at some point, our industry is going to get there. And to me, Sarah was the first person I had that conversation with. I just told my guest this before we started recording, but in a lot of my conversations with Sarah, she was telling me that she has a badass partner and that I needed to speak to her. So Sarah introduced me to her partner. I did my due diligence and she was right. She was 100% right. Her partner is a badass and she is a young woman entrepreneur that is involved in more things than I can even wrap my head around. So without any further ado, please welcome Director of Education for Normal, the president of the Highspitality Group, the founder of Cannaclub, and probably like 19 other things that I didn't have room to list, Maha Haq. Maha, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. This is going to be an exciting chat with you, Todd.
I mean, I set it up to be an exciting chat, so I feel like I've put a lot of pressure on us now.
Oh, well, no pressure. No pressure is too much for me. So I'm ready for it. Let's cover it all. I'm so excited to share all the different projects that I got to work on and involved with right now. But I'm so happy to be here. C-Lab is such an awesome group. I even told you earlier, Todd, that I attended a C-Lab event a while ago before recreational was passed in California. And it was a great experience. So I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, those, from what I understand, those West Coast chapter parties were legendary.
There's me with the C-Lab
pillow. Oh, wow, check that out. I think
you can see it. Oh,
yeah, no, I was able to see it. I think those C-Lab pillows might have actually ended up in my closet somewhere. Either that or Rob had. So, Maha, that's awesome, and it seems like you've really been in the cannabis industry for a long time. Like your involvement in the cannabis industry. When I listen to interviews, you started while you were still full-time in college. Is that true?
Yes, indeed. I went head first as soon as I turned 18. I was attending community college at the time. I thought this was an opportunity I couldn't miss. I knew it was onto something and I made the jump, even though I was still a teenager.
Interesting. So, it's really interesting to me, and I'm just gonna, you are younger than me. How much we don't need to know, but it's weird. Like I feel like people around my age and maybe a little bit younger, we were kind of the last crop of kids or generation that cannabis was really, really stigmatic, like across the board. Even kids, your peers in your friend group looked at you, and if you smoked weed, you were useless, or you're lazy, or you're a bad kid, or whatever it is. I feel like more recently, even though it's still illegal and it's not legal everywhere, that it's a lot less frowned upon because the information is out there. And I feel like, people more along the lines of your age, you were able to go straight from high school or college and look at cannabis as an opportunity. And and really not have too much stigma around it. So I know given your culture and your background, there is more, and we want to get into that. But just from a general public standpoint, when you at age 17, 18, when you're looking at the cannabis space, was stigma something that you're really worried about?
Definitely. Stigma was a major issue I was worried about. I was concerned if I would even be able to uphold a career later down the line, or if I could even stay in school if someone found out I was working at a dispensary. I constantly had to hide the fact that I was working at a dispensary during my college days. I would tell my peers like, "Oh, I've got to go to work," and they would ask, "Oh, where are you heading?" I wouldn't tell most of them unless they were really close friends of mine. There was a
Yeah.
point in time I didn't even tell my family where I was working at and how I was being paid at the time. They're like, "Oh, she's coming up with some money somewhere," and they had their doubts, and I'm like, "Oh no, I'm
Yeah.
I'm helping patients out. I'm helping some patients out." So my family, not my mom. My mom knew what was going on, but my family was, "Oh, okay, she's doing some healthcare work," and I was like, "Exactly." So that's
It-
sort of how I masked my job at the time, that I'm doing healthcare.
that's funny. I make the joke, and I told you I go off on tangents all the time. I remember when I first got into the industry and I was doing events, and there were Canadian companies telling me that they were coming into the country and they wouldn't bring their business cards or anything else. They shipped everything ahead because when the customs agents found out they were in cannabis, they were getting turned around and they were getting barred from the country. So I was lucky enough to get invited to Vicente Fox's event down in Mexico. And I
Nice.
remember going through customs and they're like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "I'm going to a business conference." "What kind of conference?" "It's a finance conference." "Finance conference focused on what?" I go, "Agriculture." Like I just wouldn't
Wow.
give it to them. And because I knew a lot of people were flying in, obviously everyone was going to the conference. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not getting deported from Mexico here. You're not doing that to me. I'm going to this event. And it's weird how we come up with these covers, which at the end of the day, they're not lies. We're
Yeah.
just not
Exactly.
mentioning cannabis.
Exactly. Like I was indeed doing healthcare. I was definitely seeing patients who needed help. But of course, like, needing to mask it, especially, thinking 10 years ago, not having a definitive pathway to recreational legalization at the time, especially in here in California. We didn't really know where our future was headed back in 2012. There were talks about it going recreational. There was talks about it being more legitimized and less destigmatized or less stigmatized. But
Yeah.
it took enough time, between 2012 and 2018. Well, rather 2016 when the legislature was passed, and 2018 is when it was implemented. There was still that I guess a very weird gap of 4 years, not knowing what the next step was. There were people who were trying to do as much as they could before it went rec, and there was people who were prepping for rec. So
Yeah.
myself, I was prepping for what was to come, and I started telling people, "Yes, I'm working at a dispensary." I told my family, I opened up, I came out of the green closet and said, "Hey, I'm working at a dispensary, but don't worry, this is going to be legal, like recreationally legal out here in the States, so you don't have to worry about me anymore." So I
Yeah.
think that gap, that 4 year gap, gave me enough time to warm up to my family and my peers, or help them warm up to what I was doing. Yeah.
It it was risky what you did because being so young, 18 years old, let's be honest, you're living at home, you're just graduating high school.
Oh
You depend on other people for your well-being at this point. And, if it went the wrong way, you could have been left with nothing before your career even got started. Me,
yeah. Oh yeah.
I started this gig at 32, 33. I got a wife, I got a kid, we've got multiple income streams, things like that. I didn't need to worry about what people thought about me for cannabis. I certainly didn't need to know what my parents thought because they haven't paid for me in a very long time. So, but I want to go back to all the way at the beginning when your mom caught you smoking for the first time, because the way that she handled it is so cool. In
Yeah.
fact, that I've had a few guests on the show that are cannabis advocates. A guy like Eben Britton, Ricky
Mm,
Williams is another one on the show.
yeah.
And one of the things I talk to these guys about, although they're NFL stars and everything else, is how do you talk to your kids about your cannabis use because you're so open about it, right? And it's a different conversation now. I have a daughter who just turned 16 months, and at some point in time, dad's going to have to explain what he does, and he's going to have to explain why he goes outside every night after she goes to bed, right? So, your mom, and I don't want to take your story from you, but when your mom caught you because of her academic background, she goes,
Mhm.
okay, defend it. So,
Yeah.
give us what that was like. Like, when she caught you, did your heart just sink? Like, oh my God, just walk us through that scenario, because I think the way she handled it was perfect.
Oh man. So I think it's important to note I had just dropped out of high school, and I was not in my mom's good books at all. And there were many reasons why I did, drop out of high school. It was, it was the third high school I had to attend. It was very rough. The transitions were very rough on me. I was dealing with a couple health issues as well. So I turned to cannabis to help me out. But mind you, I was 17. I, wasn't old enough
So
to,
I don't want to
yeah,
gloss over that, because I read that too.
yeah.
You had like an upper respiratory infection,
Yeah.
and that
So, yep, yep. And I
I
was
I
moving
do my
back and
research.
yeah, you did. Yes. This was so I kept getting upper respiratory infections during my time in high school while I was a teenager, because I was just moving back and forth from Texas, California, and I don't know, I must have caught a really bad bug, but it was very persistent. And as a result of me getting sick so often, I was on antibiotics. I was taking very harsh medication that made me lose my appetite. So my doctors at the time put me on appetite stimulators, and it was absolutely horrible experience for me. It made me very drowsy. It would like put me to sleep for 18 hours at a time, and that was not a life I wanted. So I went online, started researching on cannabis, because I knew it made people feel hungry, and I had tried it before while I was a teenager, and it made me feel hungry. It got me the munchies, and that was exactly the type of therapeutic I needed at the time. I was taking a very strong appetite stimulator, and it was not doing well for me. So the best case, I think I was a great case study to work on with the appetite stimulation capability of cannabis. So I wanted to see if it would translate well on me as someone who is taking a pill for it. So, you know, I guess that's a bit, long, a bit of a long
No,
story, but I kept continuing this regimen of smoking cannabis secretly. And one of these days, I was caught by my mom. She was very furious in her eyes. She gave me the very dirty look, but she's like, why? She asked me why. And I took that why, that open ended question, as an opportunity to educate her. And she's a clinical researcher at a cancer hospital. So she knew a bit about cannabis being used in therapy for cancer patients. And I was also volunteering at that same cancer hospital as well. And I knew patients were taking cannabis, and they were very hush hush about it. So I took that opportunity of my mom catching me smoking, of please give me a chance to explain. I will show you anything and everything you want to see. I'll show you my own stuff. And she responded back and said, show me a report, compile a report. And I did. I compiled a report. I gave it to her a couple days after. I cited all these research articles, journals. This was actual homework that I appreciated. Mind you, I had dropped out of high school. I was so unmotivated, but I was very motivated to do this project for my mom and do this project to explain cannabis. After I presented it to her, she was very impressed, and she said, "Why don't you present this to some of the patients at the hospital? This could be very beneficial for them."
wow.
And I was already a volunteer there, and I set up a small little gathering, and I was 17. This is in 2011. I set up a small little gathering of some patients, and one or two doctors even showed up. Physicians of some of those patients showed up. Did a very basic little seminar at the hospital, explaining what the endocannabinoid system is, how you can achieve certain levels of therapeutics through certain cannabinoids. It was a very, very I guess, very watered down presentation, but the beginnings of my mission to educate. Since then, I waited till I could turn 18 and work at a dispensary. At the time, you had to be 18 and up, not 21 and up. So I had a great time doing that for the patients at the hospital. My mom had this new sense of trust in me. She knew that I was an informed user. She did say, you shouldn't do it until you're an adult. And, I said, oh, I will respect your wishes. But secretly, of course, I didn't as a rebellious teenager. But I did respect the fact that she let me open this new world up for not only her, but for myself. She really pushed me to get into this get into this form of science. I think the passion behind her and me was the science and was the science component. And I think she respected that in me because she saw a budding scientist. So I think I don't think any other parent would have done the same. I think I'm very blessed to have my mom. She is a single parent and a bit unorthodox when it comes to a mother-daughter relationship, but she treated me like a peer. She treated me as a fellow scientist or a budding scientist, and pun intended. But I've it's been hit like since then I've just been continuing, and she's been supporting me every step of the way in terms of my education, my future plans, and wanting to further cannabis research. She really helped me out, man. Like I think her catching me was one of the best moments of my life.
It sounds like it because she made you, who knows if maybe in the back of her head, someone had given her a little bit of an education. She's like, I wonder if my daughter is using it for the right reasons, or, she had seen it work with cancer patients, at least give them a little bit of relief. So
Mhm.
it's funny how a little bit of an education might change someone's point of view. And I've got to be honest, out of all the teenagers that try smoking cannabis, I imagine there weren't too many who discovered it the way that you did for actual medical reasons. I can tell you, I didn't start really smoking, I want to say, until I was like 20, 22, 23 on a regular basis. And it's because
Mhm.
I noticed it helped me sleep at night, right? Now,
Yeah.
I also noticed it made me laugh my ass off at Super Troopers or a really good stand-up comedy show. But, again, this is a conversation I have with a lot of people. I think a lot of us kind of start with it, and I hate using this term, as a drug, as a substance, and you get some kind of benefit from it. At the time, you don't know what it is, but in time, you realize what you're using it for. And I can tell you now, 10, 11 years later, I know exactly what it helps me with. Don't get me wrong, there's still that certain Friday, Saturday night, I'm going to the improv. I'm going to load up on it because I want to laugh my ass off. But that part of it is that feel good feeling. So we're on the other end of the spectrum where you knew exactly what you were using it for at first, and you were able to defend it. And to me, I think that was the absolute best way for you to kick off your career in cannabis, because your mom essentially helped you spark a passion for something that has now been your career.
Yes, indeed, definitely.
I want to touch on one other thing, and I actually learned this from listening to you. It's the other kind of out of character thing for your mom being so accepting of it is that, and I did not know this at all, there is a stigma among Asians more so than other groups around cannabis. So I was completely unfamiliar with that altogether. Can you kind of enlighten me on that? Because your
Definitely.
mom, given the background and the culture, she should have tore your head off.
Oh yeah, exactly. So I mentioned my mom and I. We have a bit of an unorthodox relationship. Well, not really in a westernized sense, but definitely in a South Asian sense. We're very unorthodox. And with that being said, cannabis it grows wildly freely in Pakistan and India, where my family is from. Um, it it grows wildly. There are fields of cannabis that grow wildly and abundantly, but it remains a very, very strict taboo there. Especially with both different countries, they have a similar culture in a way, but not exactly because of the religio-cultural backgrounds each country has. So my dad is Indian, my mom is Pakistani. Um, in Pakistan and India, they have always butt heads. They want to distinguish themselves from each other, and that includes opinions on certain points. And cannabis is one of those points that they both do have opposing feelings on, but they both think of it as a taboo. So in India, it is in certain religions in India, like certain sects of Hinduism, there are practices where you do consume cannabis, but it's typically the pundits or the rishis, like the sages that are typically male, that are allowed to consume cannabis for religious purposes. Females cannot. And then in Pakistan, you have the majority religion of Islam out there, and they, like, anything considered intoxicating is banned, is not
Mhm.
allowed. And cannabis does cause some form of intoxication or psychoactivity. It's still up for debate, but in the Pakistani culture, it is seen as a drug that causes intoxication, therefore a taboo. So both think it's taboo, but have different reasons for why it's taboo. And because of that, I could not talk to my family about it at all, especially my grandma. She was a botanist herself. She was a botanist and microbiologist. I couldn't talk to her about cannabis because she was raised in an environment where they saw it literally as, this isn't allowed, this is taboo. Even though it was growing right in the mountain ranges where they would go for maybe a hike or for a trip. But otherwise, it is still a taboo. There are efforts being made in India currently. They have certain states that allow medicinal cannabis. But other than that, Pakistan is not doing much for cannabis, but they are for hemp. A lot of industrial hemp research is going on there. But otherwise, there's a long way to go in both countries, in both societies, to accept cannabis medicinally and eventually recreationally.
All right, so I'm gonna showcase my lack of world knowledge and education here because that's what we do on this show. I don't have like a young Jamie like Rogan does to keep me informed, but if I understand correctly, in those cultures, and we'll call them Eastern cultures, there is a culture of almost preventative medicine in the form of herbalism and herbs being very important. My education comes from listening to Ricky Williams, who's I think he's getting his doctorate in it. And I love you, Ricky, but I'm now paying attention more to what you say now that I've learned some stuff than when we first met. So if there's this culture of herbalism and leveraging these herbs to kind of enhance your body and feel better and have this preventative medicine to it, you would think, especially even when you go as far as looking at modern medicine, even Western medicine, a lot of it stems from plants and plants found in the wild and in the rainforest and things like that. You would think that these cultures would be the first to kind of take a step back and say, this is just part of our herbalist culture. This is a plant it is the most powerful herb in a sense, right? I I don't even know what question I can ask from this, but where is that disconnect? Is it just the intoxication feeling?
So what's interesting is in India, in Ayurveda medicine, which has existed for thousands of years, cannabis had a part in it. Soma, the drink soma, is actually a botanical blend drink of cannabis and other herbs. There's also a popularized drink that is still consumed in India called bhang. I'm sure you've heard of bhang. It's like a cannabis milk drink, so it's an infused milk drink. That's pretty popular. Soma, the drink, has its history. There's a lot of evidence of human use and of human cannabis use in South Asia, but why it turned into a taboo is I don't think there is a point to blame, or we can point fingers at something, but I do believe with colonialism and when India became British India, that is when the perception of cannabis started to dwindle down. So for I guess just as a historical fact, Dr. O'Shaughnessy from Ireland, he identified cannabis indica. The name cannabis indica means cannabis from India, and he's the one who coined the Latin term and brought attention to it. But shortly thereafter, it started getting stigmatized in almost every corner of the world. You started to see cannabis vanish from the US Book of Pharmacopoeia. You started seeing cannabis being demonized. So I think South Asia, Pakistan, and India, they followed suit with what the Westerners were doing, what the Western world was doing, and their perception of cannabis. I think that went very much, it was very coincidental for it to not be directly associated. I think it has a lot to do with them reacting to the other side of the world's reaction.
Jeez, white people screw up everything, don't we? Yeah, I mean that is very it's an interesting education because I'm starting to learn more about herbalism and Ayurveda and that culture, and you know, the people I speak to, cannabis fits in it perfectly. So you know, that's why it's interesting to me, and I really appreciate you giving me that education. Let's kind of get back to your story. So your mom catches you, you do an in-depth report, you're presenting at a hospital to patients and physicians, and now you're working in dispensaries as a bud tender, for lack of a better term, right? And this is where I really respect what you're looking at, because you kind of saw the culture of the industry at the time and you're like, this isn't right, this isn't what this industry is about, this is probably the worst side of the industry. And honestly, if the industry, and we'll talk about what I'm talking about in a second, but if the industry stayed in that vein, I don't know if I'd have a podcast like this wanting to showcase it, right? So, you know, the whole point of the show is to show, hey, we're not a bunch of lazy stoners. There's some really smart, motivated, awesome people in here. But at the time, you know, and I'm going to be very crude about this, the dispensary you were working at was following Hooters model, for an example, right? They
Yep.
wanted you to dress very revealing. I'm sure they wanted flirting and other stuff, and it was a mostly
Yeah.
female bud tender staff. And you're like, whoa, this is a medicine. If we're truly medicinal, this is not the way to go forward. I mean,
Yeah. What I feel like I can refresh some people's memories, whoever's listening, some memories over here, refresh some memories of Craigslist being the premier platform for cannabis jobs at the time. You couldn't have
wow.
any other cannabis job listings on any other official job list site. So I would have to go to Craigslist to find a job. And these Craigslist postings for bud tender jobs, or even just growing, cultivate anything related to cannabis, all those job listings looked so sketchy. They would say females only on many of the dispensary roles. They would say, must be able to, must be comfortable in uniform, and come to find out that uniform is a Hooters style outfit. A lot of those, I guess, those jobs, a lot of cannabis jobs were posted on such a website where you can get away with certain things. And that's exactly what happened. I accepted a job at a local dispensary. They give me a crop top looking shirt and said, you have to wear black short shorts every day with this top, and that's your uniform. You're allowed to take people's phone numbers. You can give phone numbers, but you can't let the camera see that you're giving your phone number. I'm like, why are we talking about
Jeez.
exchanging phone numbers here? What's going on? I started getting really scared once these rules or processes were being explained to me, rather than explaining the processes of serving a patient or restocking inventory. I was being told on how to get someone's phone number, give someone's phone number. It was so odd. I was very scared and I was ready to quit the next day, but I just had a feeling that I can change this. This can have not just female bud tenders. I felt like I can bring in some very, very good, qualified, motivated men in here and work alongside with us, and that maybe might promote us to not wear those uniforms anymore. So I suggested to my boss at the time to hire a male bud tender. He got very mad and he hired two more girls, and they were very young. I'm pretty sure they were under 18. So I just experiencing a bit of what happened those first days of my dispensary job. I felt change was necessary. I couldn't sleep well at night. I just knew I had to do something. Um, a couple weeks passed, and I tried to take on more roles, more responsibilities within the dispensary so I can get a little more say with what goes down in there. So put in work. I started giving my suggestions. I started to make certain initiatives to hire more, to diversify our employees. I did not want to just see females be the butt tenders every day, so I tried making those changes slowly but surely, and I think it worked out. I think the boss at the time, he got fed up with it. He was bought out by someone else, ownership changed. So I think everything happened for the better. But I'm glad to have brought, like, to not be demotivated from those first few days. I try to stick through it. I did wear the crop top. I did wear the booty shorts for some time, but I did not let it bog me down because I knew I was going to change it. I knew that that was not going to be my uniform anymore. So that lasted about 3 weeks. And then I said, we don't have those uniforms anymore.
That is great. I'm so happy that that didn't demotivate you out of the industry. That your passion for the plant was like, no, this is not how this industry should be. This
Yeah,
is not how we should be. I mean, at the end of the day, like I know sex sells, but you don't need that to sell cannabis.
exactly.
There's already a built-in user base or a built-in customer base, and yes, I don't know if maybe that helped them differentiate, but that was definitely a short-term plan.
Yeah.
So, what I also really like and respect about you is alongside while you started to work in the industry, you were also going to get your education and you were furthering your knowledge on the industry too, where many people, myself included, would just kind of be like, all right, I'm getting practical experience. I'm good. I'm going to learn here. You're like, no, I'm still young. I'm going to go back to school and I'm going to get my education. And I don't remember at what point, but you started following studying pharmaceuticals, and
Mhm.
you launched a cannabis club at your university as well.
Yes. So of course, I was working, but I was also going to school full time. I wanted to find a way to blend my two worlds together to
Smart
further
move.
destigmatize the industry and make it more acceptable and potentially have a chance to study cannabis at school through projects, whatever I could. So while I was at community college, I tried to start my own cannabis student group. I was rejected for the whole time I was there. I had eventually transferred into UCLA. And then as soon as I got into UCLA, I wanted to start a Canvas student group. I was rejected the first time because recreational wasn't implemented yet. But as soon as recreational passed in 2018, I went to the school administration and said, you guys cannot reject me. There is literally a wine class or a wine student group. There's a brewery group. There's like Bruins for like Bruin Brewery. Like if there is a student group that's focusing on wine or beer, why can't there be one for cannabis? So um, we got approved. No objections. They were like, "You're right. It's recreational now in California. We're a public university. We should." And at the same time, the UCLA Cannabis Research Initiative was launching too, which is the school's research program where they do cannabis projects and other clinical research projects at. But besides that, starting Cannaclub, I had to showcase a 101 curriculum to prove that Cannaclub, the Cannabis Student Group, is focused on education. So our three pillars are education, advocacy, and opportunity. So we had to fulfill that education requirement. So we launched with a 5-part series, a Cannabis 101 series. We picked out professors in the school who were willing to talk about cannabis, and it was a hit. Our classroom was overflowing. There were people from outside of school that were trying to attend. We had one class every 2 weeks for 10 weeks, and it was a hit. Every student wanted to be part of the club for a good moment in time. It was a cool club to be part of. It still is. We've been running strong at UCLA as well as 20 other universities now. So
Wow.
since starting at UCLA, we've expanded very quickly. We are at other universities. We're at USC. We're at University of Maryland, where I'm currently in grad school at. We are in Georgetown. We are in San Diego
Wow.
State now. So we're all over the country. We're in 14 states and 24 universities total. So we gained momentum from the start of our club at UCLA. Like there were eyes on us, and we wanted to make sure we did it right. And I'm glad it's continuing. We have over 5,500 members, part of Cannaclub now. We're running strong and well, and we are still upholding our mission and our values. In terms of our advocacy, we are always doing a lot of community organizing, making sure we're standing up for the right things in cannabis. And then our opportunities bit is about sharing job opportunities in the cannabis space with students, and vice versa, connecting cannabis companies to top talent from top tier universities. So it's been that's been like honestly a very fulfilling experience, and very much so a passion project. I'm glad it's been a very awesome community so far. It's brought many of us far, including myself and several other students who found amazing opportunities through it. So anyone can be part of Cannaclub. You can be an alum and still be part of Cannaclub. It's honestly like something I'm very happy worked out.
That is incredible, Maha. I gotta tell you, what you've done with Cannaclub for the
Oh,
industry a whole is revolutionary, because
thank
you're
you.
getting kids at a young age and educating them on what cannabis really is, and not just, hey kids, it's okay, it's better for you than alcohol. It's educating them on the science and the medicinal values of it, and I'm sure the endocannabinoid system and all of that. And to be in 22 American universities across the country, to have a true crop of real cannabis educated folks come out of school, I mean, that is incredible for the industry. I really hope that you're very proud of that. I really do, because I think, 5, 10 years from now, when we look back, that is going to be a tipping point to legitimizing this industry more. So
Yeah.
congratulations on that.
Oh, thank
That's
you.
huge.
It's honestly like it was a group effort. It took a lot of time to get it up and running, but everyone who's part of Canna Club, like they're all awesome. Couldn't have done it without any of our members and the other students that helped push it forward in their own schools. So I'm like, I think that was my whole mission to begin with when I was, 17, 18, is why aren't more young people like learning about this right now? How can I find a way to combine these two worlds together? Like what better world can cannabis get into than academia? I feel like
Yeah.
with getting involved in academia, it will bring more acceptance, because that will push for research, that will push for educational opportunities. So that was, I think, a good first step with, I guess, my entrepreneurial journey. I wanted to set
Yeah.
a footprint in that, I guess, respected realm of institution like UCLA and USC and these other schools. I feel like that was necessary before getting into the business side. Of course, I did both simultaneously, but I think with that legitimate credential of, hey, there is a cannabis class that now at this big school, so there must be something legit about this particular topic. So that was my goal, was to help legitimize it, destigmatize it, and that's what we're doing at Canna Club.
Yeah, I have to imagine that it wasn't that easy to get started, because I'm sure when students saw
I
a
got in a
cannabis
lot of
club, they're
trouble.
like, "Oh, sweet, let's go smoke," and you had to be like, "No, no, this is educational." And I'm sure, weeding through the students that just wanted to come hang versus the ones that wanted to educate was no easy task. So I can't imagine, it was that easy to get off the ground.
Yeah, no, I got in a lot of trouble by different schools, but for the betterment of
Yeah, and you have a chapter in Florida too, right? University of Central Florida.
Yes, I believe, yes, we do have one, but I don't know how some schools are functioning now because of COVID. So they have been
Mhm.
a bit inactive, but yes, Central Florida, UCF.
Very cool. I've got
Yeah,
to get my alumni to open up a
definitely.
Cannaclub for sure. I'm an alumnus of Florida State University, and funny enough, you've got three heads of cannabis companies in the state of Florida: Todd
Ooh,
Beckwith, Brady Cobb, and
nice.
Kim Rivers are all Florida State graduates. So,
Well, the best
you
part
know,
is any school who's interested in starting a Canna Club, I can help them throughout the whole process. Like that's the hard part, is submitting your proposal to have a cannabis centered group. on campus. So I help out with that. So any students watching this, I can totally help you start your own Cannaclub.
Very cool. So when I get my quarterly call from Florida State asking for money, I know what the demands I'm going to make are going to be this
Yeah.
time around. So, so you did Cannaclub, which is amazing. That's an amazing accomplishment, and honestly, you deserve to be on the entrepreneur list just by starting that alone. But you've got your hands in so many different parts of the cannabis space now. You founded a few companies. You're president of the Highspitality group. How did you transition from these bud tenders and educational roles into these more entrepreneurial business starting roles? I mean, listen, on paper, you dropped out of high school and you were a pothead at 16, 17, right? You're not supposed to be in the position that you're in according to society, right? You shouldn't be involved in 4 different businesses and nonprofits and all this stuff, but you are. So you're proving everybody wrong. But where did you get where was the thought in your back of your head where you go from I want to be in the cannabis industry to being an entrepreneur? Because that is another scary jump, especially from someone like you didn't work for a big corporation. You didn't have that experience. You just went straight into entrepreneurship.
Yep.
So what was the motivating factor there? Was it with your experience with Canna Club?
So I suppose like my entrepreneurial spirit in cannabis started when I started working as a bud tender. I just saw so many issues that could be fixed, but were not being fixed because the owners or the management were not looking to fix it. So that motivated me to go up the ranks. That motivated me to become a manager. That motivated me to focus on operations and processes of a cannabis business. So at the time, it was a dispensary. So I was very interested in operations. I started writing SOPs and reading on compliance. I wanted to understand the ins and outs of a dispensary business so I could help others start their own. So that got me into a consulting gig where I helped people with their business license applications. That gave me the opportunity to learn about all those points in compliance, all the items needed to start a cannabis business, but I didn't have to do it on my dime. I was doing it for others so they can do it on their dime. So I got a chance to learn a lot about that because I took interest in the dispensary operations where I was a bud tender at or where I was a GM at. So I did get promoted at these dispensaries that I started off entry level, but with that experience, I try to implement it into people who wanted to start their own business. And that made me want to look into businesses that I can start on my own. But the opportunity of doing business license applications, I think expanded my knowledge on really what it takes to start any business, not just cannabis. So that truly set forth my vision of wanting to focus on just entrepreneurship in addition to education and research. So of course I love educating. I'm a huge proponent of cannabis research and would love to do would love to do more research in the future, but I really respect the business side because it has evolved so much. And I have sort of seen the evolution, especially the transition from medical to recreational. It was very tough for some people. So, understanding how to make that transition into a smooth one was something I wanted to accomplish. And I got to practice that through the consulting agency I worked at. So, and another thing that I did was I wanted to work at every sector of cannabis. I started off working at dispensaries. I then worked for a dispensary that had a cultivation operation. I then worked for another dispensary that had a manufacturing operation. So I wanted to understand each side of the cannabis business. Most recently, I worked at an analytical testing lab, very different from a retail or a dispensary side, but I wanted to get into each part of the supply chain, and I think that's what helped me understand what I want to do with myself and with the different projects I'm working on in the future.
So let me just kind of break down what you did
Yeah.
here because to me it's really genius, right? And I'm sure people watching this are just going to consider it the Maha Love Fest, but I'm impressed because you had your formal education that you're going through. And listen, nothing against schools, but sometimes when you go and you learn business and everything else, a lot of us, especially, true entrepreneurs, they learn by practice or they learn by doing. So to me, you were getting your formal pharmaceutical cannabis education at your university. You incorporated cannabis into that, but you got almost an MBA level education just by through your work. And to have the forethinking to say, if I want to really understand this industry, I've got to understand the entire supply chain, SOPs, operations, things that is
Yeah.
incredibly valuable. So you looked at your work, your income is not something I need to do to pay my bills as I'm going through school, but I'm also going to get this education here. I'm going to pay my bills by getting my education, and I'm going to have, an MBA equivalent level education in business in the cannabis space here while I have my formal education. I know you're still in school going for your master's of
My
pharmaceutical,
last
something
semester, I'm almost done.
very cool. Pharmaceutical science. I'm like, why can't I remember the last word of the degree? And it's actually with a focus in cannabis, which is really cool. So the way that you've gathered your education is amazing.
Yeah, I think, well, I do think it's worth noting that I was stuck in community college for 5 years because I was working full time and attending school simultaneously. So there were a couple of years where I went to school part time, but I think that's very important for some students. I think taking some time to not do an internship, but to be full force in a job and try to do school part time is very beneficial. For someone like me, it worked out. I wasn't into the whole gap year idea. I wasn't into just doing one or the other at a time. I really wanted to work. I wanted to work and attend school. I couldn't imagine it any other way. And I always recommend this to other students that are interested in, in education as well as the business of it, is to do both routes. Go traditional by obtaining an education, and do the practical where you are doing an apprenticeship or learning the ins and outs of a business through a role that, or through an entry level role. So that, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I try to do both, and it's worked out. I'm glad that it has worked out. It took a lot of time, but I'm glad that it got to work out. It took me a while to get my undergrad degree, but it's crazy to now say that I'm almost done with my graduate degree, and I will be applying for a doctorate soon. So
Very cool. That
yeah,
is
no.
really cool.
And
I
then
mean, no, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm saying I think people need to take note, right? Sometimes you just need to find your passion, and your passion is what's going to drive you through everything, right? And I'm curious to know, and I know you had another point you wanted to make, but was there ever a plan B, right? You were young, you went kind of straight into cannabis. Was there ever another dream, if you will, like, hey, if it doesn't work out, I always wanted to do this?
Yes, so I did have a backup plan, and my undergrad is in math. So I thought, hey, I should just become a math teacher. I should become a math professor of sorts. But that was my backup plan if cannabis did not work out, or if cannabis got spontaneously illicit everywhere in the state. Or if cannabis was completely, outside of my reach, I was thinking of, pursuing math. I just thought that that would be a really, I guess, a safe backup plan, but it wasn't something I really wanted to do. I know I wanted to stay in cannabis, or something even relevant to cannabis, whether it was hemp or, honestly, I can't think of my life any other way now. But my backup plan was math, a math teacher.
Boring. No,
I
I'm just
know,
kidding.
exactly.
Uh, I'm glad that it worked out for you. So, and it's crazy to me how much you kind of dive into your topics, right? Again, going through my research for this interview, I came across an article you wrote on the vape crisis, and
Mm,
candidly is probably one of the most in-depth, best explained articles on the vape crisis that I've read, because I remember at the time my parents, my wife
mm,
specifically, they were looking at me and they were looking at that vape pen and seeing everything on the news, and they're like, don't do that. And I just remember saying, especially my wife she doesn't consume, she doesn't like the smell. So the vape pen solves that problem very easily. It doesn't smell, right? So I remember them looking at me. I go, no, I'm 99% sure those are the illegal cartridges. And I did all the research I could, for it, when I say all the research I could, I did a lot of Googling. But I couldn't find an article that really explained it well. Of course, 2 years after the vape crisis,
Mhm.
I finally found it. Thank you. But you go into such topics of temperature, of the materials that the vapes are being created from. You go so far beyond just the additives that were added to the vape cartridges that it's really incredible. So now that we've gotten out of the vape crisis, I want to touch on this because your level of education on it is really high. Do we have to worry about legitimate vapes that we're buying from dispensaries?
If your vape is tested legitimately, then there shouldn't be a concern. Um, the main issue right now is that there are no standards for the actual battery that produces the heat source. Because, like you just mentioned earlier, I mentioned temperature in my whole vape crisis analysis, and that being so because there is temperature degradation that happens of cannabinoids and terpenes, and that then turns into a bit of it turns into a more toxic chemical if you were to heat it too high. But with all that being said, if your product is legit, then you shouldn't have an issue.
Very cool. That's
Yeah.
very good to know. And mom, dad, Laura, if you guys are listening, there's your answer right there. We're still good. It's funny, in the state of Florida, we have a true medical program here. And I remember when I got my card, I had so many friends and other people saying, why are you getting your card? You can get better stuff cheaper from this guy or that guy. Or whatever. I just go, it's just something makes me feel more comfortable buying it legitimately and making sure that it was tested. Now, there might be issues with that process and everything else, maybe in our state too. I don't know, but at least it's going to a freaking testing facility and there are
Yeah,
results, hopefully they're not faked, that I can look at if I want to. So it makes me feel a whole lot more comfortable.
definitely.
So we've covered a lot of your journey, which is extremely in depth. Let's talk about the things that you're doing now.
Oh,
So
I
you
will
are
summarize it as quick as I can because there are.
Well, we don't need to go that quick. You can take a little bit of time. You're doing a lot of important stuff, but it
No.
seems like you very much have your focus in education, and then the other focus is hospitality as well too. So let's
Mhm.
talk about the educational stuff first. You've got it looks like you're on the faculty at Oaksterdam, which is awesome, and then you're also program director for the American Botanical Drug Association. I need to understand what that is. And
Yep.
then you've also got director of education at Normal. So let's start with the American Botanical,
All
damn
right.
it, Drug Association.
So the American Botanical Drug Association is a team of peer reviewers. We consult on pre-IND drug development trials. So if there is someone who's trying to make a botanical drug, we help them through the whole FDA drug approval process. That entails pre-IND trials. IND is investigational new drug. So that's what we do out there. And I am leading a lot of our guidance and educational workshops on how to develop your own botanical drug, approved botanical drug. So that's what I'm doing at the Botanical Drug Association. And then we've got Oaksterdam. I teach some of their science classes. They've got some awesome programs, certificates out there for people who want to further their cannabis education without the commitment to a lengthier program at a school. It's been a great experience working with them. They've been around for Oaksterdam has been around for a very long time. So and have been at the forefront
Yeah.
of certain educational initiatives out here in California, specifically Oakland. So that's been a great experience. Yeah, I'm their science faculty member. And then LA Normal. The LA chapter is the board that I sit on. That's a more recent development. I am helping out with educational initiatives that are more patient-facing. We've been pushing for SB 34, a bill that promotes the compassion care program, meaning that we can give donations to needy, cannabis donations to needy patients. So that's what I've been focusing on out there. And then that's a little bit about of my education portion, but I will segue into a newer business that I'm trying to start called CREA.
Okay.
A combination of education with a little bit of business as well. We do a lot of educational programming, and we do research projects. We help cannabis companies out with any PR and do that through the form of a research project. So right now, my business CREA is engaged with a medical cannabis recommendation provider called VeryHeal. They have a massive database on cannabis patients and their consumption history, etc. And CREA is doing a research project with them to help assess or to help analyze the use of medical cannabis during the time of COVID. So that's a project I'm currently working on with them.
Very cool.
So now we're going to segue into the businesses that I've been helping out and have started. You already know about Highspitality, or THG, the Highspitality Group. Consumption lounges, as you already know, that's really going to be the next big thing in
Oh
cannabis.
yeah.
It's going to be awesome once life returns to normalcy and we can all socialize. My interest in the consumption lounge setting started when I worked on a business license application for a consumption lounge in West Hollywood. Sorry, give me 1 second. My cat just
You are.
escaped.
No worries. That's the always fun thing about doing
Oh
these
man.
podcasts live. You never know what's going to
Yeah.
happen. So
Oh gosh. Yep. I gotta get my cat soon, but it's okay.
someone broke into your house too, but I wasn't going to tell you till.
Oh, yeah. But so besides Highspitality, I am also working with a couple startup brands, college student startup brands. One is called
Wow.
Candience. It's a recent Berkeley graduates. They have a very interesting CBD hemp product that they provide to usually for college students looking for productivity, and yeah, my cat escaped. Can you? Yeah, he's gonna run away, I think. Sorry.
Oh no.
So, and then another brand that I'm helping out is called Hala Hemp. It's a Black woman-owned brand. She is a recent UCLA graduate, and she donates 5% of her sales to Last Prisoner Project and other nonprofits that are pushing for reparations for the war on drugs. So, whew, that was a long list of things that I'm working on, but I'm very happy to be involved in all of them. Like I'm pretty sure that's most of the things I'm working on. Oh, one more thing. One more thing. I'm helping out a new sales agency that promotes minority-owned brands. So
Very cool.
I'm helping out minority brands get into dispensary shelves out here in California. So and they're called the Scale Team. We have a variety of minority-owned brands that we stock, and yeah, that is essentially what I'm working on in a nutshell. I'm doing a lot, but I love it.
You are doing a ton, and it's crazy. I mean, you've gotten to the second phase of your career where you're able to share your education and share your experience to so many different people. And I'm sure, Cannaclub, besides being a great educational spot, I'm sure there's a lot of startups that are gonna come out of that. Real quick, because I don't want you to lose your cat. Do
No,
you
I
have
got
to
it.
go?
He's good.
Okay.
He's good.
Good. Because I don't want to drag out this conversation and all of a sudden I see on Facebook like my cat ran away. I can't find it. So
No,
now that your cat's safe, it's incredible. So obviously I met you through Sarah. How did the two of you link up for a Highspitality?
oh my gosh. So it's a very interesting story. So I was actually speaking at another event. It was actually through the California or the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, which I'm also helping out now, part of their board team now. But the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce was having an event in Orange County right before the pandemic hit. So this was in February. I think I gave a speech on the vape report that I worked on, as well as Cannaclub. One of her associates, like, just came up to me and said, "Hey, like, that was a great presentation. I want to connect you with one of my friends." And she reached out to me over LinkedIn, and we started following each other on Instagram. We stopped talking, I think, because of the pandemic. But then I saw her post a picture, and Tarzana was tagged on it. The city of Tarzana was tagged on it. And I live in Encino, Tarzana, out here in the valley in LA. And I'm like, I think I live next to you. And she's like, do you? And I'm like, I think I do. And she sent me her address, and we're 3 minutes away from each other. And knowing that we're so close to each other, we met up, we discussed what we were working on. I told her that, one thing that I wish I got to work on but didn't get to was consumption lounges. Like, I did 2 license applications for it, but I never had a chance to work in one, and she did. So we connected on that end. She came from restaurant side, I came from the cannabis side. We nerded out on consumption lounges. I nerded out on the application process. She nerded out on her time working at the Cannabis Cafe in West Hollywood. And we just thought that this is going to be a really, really good partnership. Like, we're bringing in a lot of information from parts that we ourselves don't have it on our own. So just compiling our skill sets and combining our information just really hit a nail on the head that we're onto something, and we need to help other cannabis consumption lounge licensees and prospective applicants out there. Like, we have a lot of good information. We need to make sure that we share this with the right people and the people who need this sort of help, and like help out the people who need this sort of help.
Yeah. V-
So
Very cool.
yeah,
I mean, listen, I know you're involved in like 973 projects, but this is one I'm very excited about
me
because,
too.
like I said at the beginning of the show, this is the next part of cannabis: is how do we make it social? How do we make it normal? And I know like cannabis social 101 1.0 is going to be beverages and things of that nature, but the conversation I've had with you and I've had with her, I'm excited to see what you all do. And I know there's a bigger
Thank
team than
you.
just the two of you, but I'm very excited to see it. And I think the two of you complement each other really well. I texted Sarah earlier to see if I can get some embarrassing stories. She was kind enough not to share them, but
Oh,
you guys,
thanks,
you
Sarah.
complement each other so well that even to the point, the way that you consume, she's a flower person. You
Yep.
enjoy concentrates and everything else. So you guys complement each other in that nature too.
Yeah, I like to think that we are each other's yin and yang. She covers areas that I can't, and I do the same for her. And honestly, like, this has been a really great learning experience for everyone involved in this because it's so new. And I, d- I'm very excited for where it goes. I know this is going to be like that main entrepreneurial, I guess, thing that I think will go very, very far. So I've been really focusing a lot of my efforts on hospitality, and just getting prepared for what's to come. There's so much that we need to prepare for. Like, I I want to make sure we're ready for consumption lounges. Like,
Well,
there's so much that's gonna happen.
Well, I want to be invited to a lot of the openings that
You
you guys are going to do.
will.
So make sure you don't forget about me with that. But listen,
Never.
we've been talking for over an hour. I don't want to take up any more of your time lest any more animals escape. So on that note, before I let you go, let's get all the promos out of there. Any websites, any social media you want to promote, let's get that all going.
Definitely. Okay, so if anyone wants to connect with me on Instagram, I'm Hi Maha, High Maha, Maha. So that's my handle on there. If you want to learn more about hospitality, we are Highspity, Hospitality. So that's on us on Instagram, and our website is highspitality.com. Cannaclub, you can find us on Instagram. We are cannaclub.ucla, cannaclub.usc. We got all the different schools that have their own handles, but our centralized one is cannaclub.group. If you want to learn more about some of the research projects I'm working on, that's CREA.usa. and the website is creagroup.org. And then if you want to learn more about some of the brands that I've been helping out on Instagram, they're Hala Hemp and Can Beyonce. So CANBIANCE, Can Beyonce. It's like ambience, but Can Beyonce, Can Beyonce. So
You've got too much stuff to remember.
I got too much going on, but those are handles that y'all should follow. The main one is Hi Maha. Very easy to find me.
Very cool. Well, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you.
As you progress in your career, maybe a year from now, we definitely need to get you back. I tell this to every guest, but at some point I will get out to California and I'd love to do an episode in person. So
Definitely. You definitely have to come out here and we'll show you around. Some consumption lounges should be open by then.
excellent. Well, thank you. And thank you, everybody at home. This has been another episode of Elevate Your Grind. Like I said, March 11th is going to be the next virtual event that we're doing for C-Lab. Check that out at joinclab.com. If you missed any part of this interview, and it was a good one, so you don't want to miss it, it'll be live on our YouTube page at youtube.com/elevateyourgrind on Monday, so you can check it out there. Folks, we're done for the week. We'll be live with you again next week on Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, right here at facebook.com/Cannabusiness Group. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.